Okay, I want you to picture the biggest question. I mean, the absolutely biggest question you can possibly ask. I'm not talking about, what's for dinner? Or did I leave the stove on?
No, no, the big one.
The one that keeps philosophers, scientists, and probably you staring at the ceiling at like 3 in the morning.
Why is there something?
Exactly. Why is there something rather than nothing?
It's the ultimate question, really. It's the starting point for, well, for everything else we ask.
It is. And usually when we get into this, people fall into one of two camps, right? You've got the purely materialist side. We're all just a cosmic accident, a lucky roll of the dice.
And then you have the religious side. We're here because of some kind of divine plan.
But today, we're doing something a little different. We're doing a deep dive into the case for a divine creator. And I want to be really clear right from the start. This is not a sermon.
Oh, far from it. The material we're looking at today isn't scripture. It's an anthology of arguments. We're talking logic, cosmology, biology, moral philosophy.
The whole gamut.
The whole thing. The mission here is really to see if belief in a God can be rational.
That's the key word, isn't it? Rational. I mean, the sources pull from heavyweights like Alvin Plantinga, William Lane Craig. These are not people saying, just believe because I told you so.
No, they're saying, look at the data.
And the data is pretty surprising. We're going to follow a line of reasoning that starts at the very edge of the universe and zooms all the way in to the neurons firing in your brain right now.
It's basically a detective story. If the universe is a crime scene, or I guess a creation scene, what clues were left behind?
And does the evidence point to a suspect?
Exactly.
So let's crack open the case file. The first piece of evidence is, it's the biggest one, the universe itself. Specifically, the fact that it had a beginning.
Right. Segment 1, the cosmological argument. And to get why this is so huge, you have to realize that for most of history, the smart money was on the universe being eternal.
Steady state theory.
It was just always there. Static, no beginning, no end.
And if there's no beginning, you don't really need a creator. There was no moment of creation.
But the source material points out that the 20th century it completely wrecked that idea.
The Big Bang.
The Big Bang changed everything. We're talking about the discovery that the universe is expanding. So if you just, rewind that tape,
You get to a starting point.
you inevitably get to a single point of origin about 13.8 billion years ago. The whole universe just exploding into existence from a singularity.
Which puts the materialist view in a bit of a tight spot. Because now you have this really stubborn syllogism that the text breaks down for us.
Okay, let's unpack it.
Premise 1. Everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Which is, that's just intuitive. Things don't just pop into being for no reason.
Right. Premise 2. The universe began to exist. That's the scientific part.
And so the conclusion is?
Therefore, the universe has a cause.
It sounds simple, almost too simple, but the implications are just massive.
The source uses a great analogy. A chair or a tree. You see a chair in a room, you know it didn't just appear. A carpenter made it. Wood was gathered. There's a chain of events.
But here's where the logic gets a little tricky, because if everything has a cause, you run into a problem.
The who created God question. That's always the first thing people ask. If God made the universe, who made God? And then who made that creator? You're stuck in a loop.
It's what philosophers call an infinite regress. Imagine a line of dominoes falling.
Okay.
You see the last one fall because the one before it pushed it. But can that line of dominoes go back forever?
No, you'd never get to the now. You'd have to cross an infinite number of yesterdays to get here. It doesn't work.
Exactly. You can't have an infinite number of past events. So logic says there must be a first cause.
An uncaused cause.
Something that started the dominoes falling but wasn't pushed itself.
So to avoid that infinite loop, you need something outside the rules. Something that wasn't caused.
Correct. And this is where the profile of our suspect starts to form. If this first cause created space and time,
It has to exist outside of space and time.
so it must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial,
And unbelievably powerful.
which, as the text argues, starts to sound a lot like the classical definition of God.
And it's not just a philosophical trick. The source brings up the cosmic background radiation,
Yeah.
the second law of thermodynamics. The universe is winding down,
The batteries are running out.
which means they had to be wound up at some point.
Yeah.
The universe is practically screaming, I had a beginning.
Okay, so we have a cause. But the universe didn't just start as some chaotic mess. And this leads us to the second pillar of the argument. This is where the science gets really, really precise.
The fine-tuning argument.
Sometimes called the Goldilocks enigma. When physicists started measuring the fundamental forces of nature, gravity, electromagnetism, the strong nuclear force, they found something really strange.
They're not random numbers.
Not at all.
Yeah.
They fall within this impossibly narrow, razor-thin range that allows for life to exist.
The source uses the cosmological constant as the prime example of this. This is the energy density of empty space.
Mm-hmm.
And the numbers here are they're staggering.
It's hard to even describe. The text uses an analogy. Imagine a dial with, I don't know, a billion settings on it.
Right.
If you turn that dial one tiny click to the right, the universe expands so fast that matter never clumps together. No stars, no galaxies, no you.
And one click to the left.
The whole universe collapses back on itself a few milliseconds after the Big Bang. Game over.
So what are the odds of getting it right by chance?
Something like 1 in 10 to the power of 120.
I can't even picture that number.
It's like throwing a dart across the entire observable universe and hitting a bullseye 1 millimeter wide on the other side. The source argues that when you see that kind of precision, calling it luck just stops being a rational explanation.
It implies design.
It points strongly toward design.
But, okay, we have to talk about the multiverse. That's the counter-argument I always hear. Sure, the odds are insane in our universe, but what if there are infinite universes? We just happen to live in the lucky one.
It's the standard rebuttal, absolutely. But the source material pushes back on that. First, there's zero observational evidence for other universes. It's a hypothesis.
Right, it's a concept, not a fact.
But more importantly, the text says it just kicks the can down the road. It just shifts the problem.
What do you mean?
Well, let's say there is a multiverse generator, some machine or mechanism spitting out these bubble universes.
Okay.
That mechanism itself would need to be incredibly fine-tuned to work. So you haven't solved the problem of design, you've just moved it up one level. Who designed the universe factory?
So the multiverse doesn't get you out of the design problem.
Not according to this argument. The complexity we see is better explained by an intelligent mind than by just, a random cosmic lottery.
Right. Okay, so we've looked at the hardware of the universe, the physics, the stars, but the source takes a really sharp turn here. We stop looking out through the telescope and we start looking in the mirror.
Right, from the physical to the moral. Segment 3, the argument from objective morality.
This is the one I think really connects with people's day-to-day lives, but it can also be the hardest to pin down. The core claim is, if objective moral values exist, then God must exist.
And we have to define objective. It means something is true whether anyone believes it or not. Like 2 + 2 or 4, that's just true.
It's not a matter of opinion.
Not at all. And the argument is that certain moral truths, like torturing a child for fun is wrong, are just like that. They're objectively true, independent of what any person or culture thinks.
The source uses some pretty heavy examples to make the point. Genocide, slavery, the Holocaust. It argues we don't look at the Holocaust and just say, oh, that was just a different cultural preference.
No, we say it was evil. Real, objective evil. But here's the trap for the materialist. If we're just matter in motion, just advanced primates, where does a concept like evil even come from?
In nature, when a lion kills a gazelle, it's not murder.
It's lunch.
Right. So if we're just biological accidents, then our morality is just a survival instinct, a social contract we cooked up to keep society from falling apart.
Exactly. If you take away anything transcendent, morality just becomes relative. It's just the fashion of the day. But the source argues that our deepest gut feeling rebels against that idea. We feel that justice is a real thing, something we discover, not something we invent.
It's that gut feeling. When you see an act of true selflessness or true cruelty, you're not just seeing biology. You feel like you're seeing something moral.
And that's the pivot. If there's a moral law that binds all of us, there must be a moral authority that stands above all of us, something that anchors these values in reality, not just in shifting human opinions.
So the argument is, we know objective right and wrong exist. Materialism struggles to explain that. Therefore, there must be a moral lawgiver.
A standard of goodness itself that exists outside of humanity. Because if there is no God, everything is permitted. But we know everything isn't permitted.
Therefore, God exists. That's a heavy one. But it leads right into the next mystery the text tackles. Not just what we value, but the fact that we can value things at all.
Right. The mystery of the mind.
Segment 4.
The so-called hard problem of consciousness. This is a massive headache for neuroscience. We can map the brain. We can see the neurons fire when you feel pain or you taste chocolate.
But we can't explain how that physical process creates the subjective first-person experience of ouch or yum.
Exactly. It's the difference between a computer processing data about a red apple and you seeing red. I can program a robot to say that is beautiful, but it doesn't feel awe. It has no inner life.
It's just running code.
And the source brings up this concept of intentionality. It's the mind's ability to be about something. Your thoughts can be directed at the future, or at a memory, or at the concept of justice.
And a bunch of atoms aren't about anything, they just are. A rock isn't thinking about being a rock.
Right. So if our minds have this property intentionality and physical matter doesn't, then our minds can't be purely physical. The argument is that this points to a non-physical part of us, a soul, a consciousness, something derived from a greater consciousness.
And this connects to that nagging sense of purpose we all feel. The text points out that humans are the only species asking, why am I here?
That's a huge clue. Evolution drives us to survive and reproduce. It doesn't drive us to write poetry or contemplate the meaning of life or search for truth. This hunger for meaning suggests we were made for more than just survival.
There's that C.S. Lewis quote in the text, right?
Yes. If I find in myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world.
That really hits home. And it's interesting you mentioned poetry, because the source have a whole section on what it calls intangible evidence. Things like beauty and experience.
This is where the argument becomes less of a logical proof and more of a broader case. Think about our reaction to natural beauty. A snowflake, a sunset. From a purely evolutionary standpoint, why should we care?
A sunset doesn't help me find my next meal, so why does it take my breath away?
The source suggests this is a kind of signal. The universe is saturated with this gratuitous beauty. It's beauty for beauty's sake, and that's the hallmark of an artist. It's a form of communication.
And speaking of communication, the text gets into religious experience. And I like that it didn't just talk about vague feelings, it named names.
And very smart names, too. Thomas Aquinas, one of the greatest logicians ever, had a divine experience so powerful he just stopped writing. Simone Weil, a brilliant philosopher, had a mystical encounter that took her from agnosticism to belief.
The easy dismissal is to say it's just a hallucination. Oh, your brain was just firing funny.
But the text says you have to look at the results. These aren't chaotic visions, they're transformative. They lead to more altruism, more peace, more moral clarity. And it's not just a few people, it's millions across every culture reporting contact with a transcendent reality.
It's a data set. You can interpret the data differently, but you can't just ignore it.
And there's a practical side, too. Religion as a cultural anchor, things like the Ten Commandments, the whole concept of universal human rights. These ideas grew out of a worldview that said every individual matters because they're made in the image of God.
So we've covered a lot. The Big Bang, the fine-tuning of physics, objective moral laws, the mind, beauty, experience, which brings us to the final segment, the cumulative case.
This is the key. The source includes a personal story about a philosophy student, and the turning point for him wasn't one single aha moment.
So it wasn't just finding a watch on the beach and saying, aha, a watchmaker.
No, it was the total weight of all these different arguments piling up.
It's like a courtroom case. You've got a fingerprint, a motive, a weapon, an eyewitness. Any single one might be explained away, but together.
Together, they form a cohesive picture. The expert in the text frames it like strands in a rope. Cosmology gives us a cause something uncaused and powerful.
Fine-tuning gives us an intelligence, something that designs.
Morality gives us goodness, a personal standard of what's right.
And consciousness gives us purpose.
When you lay all those on top of each other, the image that comes into focus is, well,
God.
That's the argument, that the God hypothesis explains all these very different things, from stars and atoms to ethics and minds, better than the naturalist hypothesis, which has to rely on a whole series of very lucky accidents.
It feels like the source is saying that at a certain point, skepticism actually becomes the less logical position. Like you have to do more mental gymnastics to explain away all this evidence than to just follow where it leads.
Exactly. It forces you to confront reality. If the universe isn't an accident, then maybe our lives aren't either.
It changes everything. If there's a why behind the what, then we're not just background noise in a random story. We're part of a narrative.
And the source ends with a really provocative thought, which I think is a good place for us to end too. It ties all of this back to that very first question.
Lay it on us.
If the universe is so perfectly fine-tuned for life, and our minds are so perfectly fine-tuned for understanding the universe, maybe the fact that we are even asking these questions is the point.
Like the search for truth isn't just us shouting into a cosmic void.
Right. Maybe the search itself is an invitation.
That is definitely something to chew on while you're staring at the ceiling tonight. A huge thank you to the authors of The Case for a Divine Creator for giving us a serious mental workout today.
Definitely a deep dive worth taking.
Thanks for listening. Keep asking the big questions.
See you next time.